Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way on this episode of Off 90. We take a look at the past, present, and future of Winona. We meet an artist who makes non-figurative paintings in Rochester. We learn about the humble beginnings of a man who later became a household name. And there's music in the air in Chatfield. It's all just ahead, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Off 90. Located on the Mississippi, the city of Winona is steeped in Minnesota history and the arts. It is home to colleges, festivals, museums, and major corporations. We did a little exploring in Winona to find out its history, how it's doing now, and to learn about its future.
I believe Henry Huff did name the city Winona, and prior to that it was known as Montezuma, and I'm kind of glad they changed it. My name's Mark Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of the Winona County Historical Society and the Mayor of the City of Winona. The word Winona is a Dakota word that means firstborn daughter. Winona essentially is an island city, and if you go up on Garvin Heights, which is a scenic overlook 575 feet above the city of Winona, and you look down, you can see the main channel of the Mississippi River and Lake Winona right in front of you. It's really situated in what I think is the most beautiful part of the entire Mississippi River. I've traveled it from Lake Itasca to Baton Rouge, and I don't think there's any prettier part of the river than from Lake Pepin to La Crosse, and we're right in the middle of that. Well, Winona was the site of indigenous people for many hundreds of years. During the 1840s, there was a steamboat captain by the name of Orrin Smith, and he had a steamboat called the Nominee, and he ran between Galena, Illinois and St. Paul. And as he passed here, he was always kind of keeping his eye open. He thought this would be a good place for a city. And in 1851, when the Treaty of Mendota was signed, that opened up this side of the river for settlement, and he dropped off his ship's carpenter and a couple other guys in October 1851, and they staked out the first land claims. And it was the lumber business primarily in the second half of the 19th century that fueled Winona's economy, but it was also the railroads and flour milling, and Winona was known as the Gate City. It was the drop-off point for up to 1,300 steamboats every season, dropping people off that went further west to southern Minnesota and the Dakotas to settle, and the lumber business is what fueled a lot of that, and it supplied the lumber for the homes and the churches and the schools and businesses that were built. And you can see today in a lot of the grand buildings and the homes and public buildings that we still have here, how prosperous Winona was at that time. One of the things I think that does help define Winona and its people is the entrepreneurial spirit that we have here. It's been shown time and time again that there's something in the water here, because so many people from Winona have started companies and done very well, and everything from Barron's manufacturing of pails and garbage cans to the Fastenal company in the late 1960s, and the Peerless Chain Company, the Winona Canoe, SciTech now, and Hal Leonard Publishing Company. These are all people from Winona that are coming up with great ideas and developing companies and doing very well with it. And we have over 60 manufacturing companies here in our community. And it's one of the reasons why I think Winona is almost recession-proof, that we don't have one company that dominates our entire local manufacturing. So we've weathered the storms very well here, and our unemployment figure is usually lower than the state, and the state of Minnesota is usually lower than the country. So Winona today really has essentially full employment. We do have, I think, an arts and culture component to our community that may not exist to the degree that we have in Winona. A lot of people are here, and I think they're attracted, for the arts and the culture, but because of the beautiful environment around us here, the bluffs and the river, make this really one of the most beautiful places in North America. And who wouldn't want to live here and do their art? I'll challenge anybody to find a community of 28,000 people that has the quality of life that we have here in Winona. Well, I started here in February 1983. I've been here about 33 and a half years, so a long time. Well, I love my job. If you've got a job that you look forward to going to every day, and I love Winona, and my wife and I raised our 2 children here, and we think this is the best place to live, and we enjoy Winona so much that why would I leave? I think that Winona will continue to embrace its arts and culture and its manufacturing and its downtown and its riverfront, and I think Winona's placed a high regard on quality of life, and I think that's important to those of us that live here, and I think that we're going to continue to embrace that.
After taking time out to raise his family, Paul Walech-Roth was drawn back to making art. His work includes abstract paintings and ebony drawings. Paul feels that art is more important now than ever to engender beauty and spirituality in an ever-increasing technology-driven world. It is the act of creating something from nothing that gives Paul a sense of purpose and balance in his life.
Artwork has a price. Just don't let fear take you. Don't let fear prevent you from living. Don't let fear prevent you from creating. My name is Paul Walech-Roth. I live in Rochester, and I try to do artwork. I paint. If you're going to really create artwork, it's not like that you're doing it for the guy next door or for a gallery or something. It stands in need of you. And so there's a period of time where you get away from the art altogether and you don't even think about it. And I suppose there must be things that are going on levels that I'm unaware of. And at one point it comes out and it's like it has to be expressed. Then you can explode onto the canvas or on that painting or the drawing. and just let it happen. And not like have your preconceived notions of what it's supposed to be, but just simply allow it to happen. Even if it's an ugly painting and nobody else in the world loves it or likes it, it might actually be the best piece that I do. And then I can live with that. I was actually just scribbling, and different aspects of the drawing was like acting on itself, and that's when I came up with these these strands that could be either DNA or muscle with like pockets or contortions and all that stuff. So that was probably the piece where it really was beginning to happen. And then I just went with a vein of thought about making these larger things, and there were spheres, and then how they like push and pull on each other or tear each other apart, or ascending or descending. That involves biomorphic abstractions. Biomorphic abstractions just mean that it's something that's not hard edges, that's something that's resemblant of something that's organic. I have a show that's being generously shown by Sylvan Durbin at the Owatonna Arts Center. The show is critically important to me because it'll be a platform to what my next work will be. The pitfalls and the problems that I failed in my last paintings, I won't make those same mistakes, hopefully. I'll have learned from those and then go from there. The artwork that I have really isn't meeting the needs what I have and where I want to go with it. So I've decided that probably after the show, whatever hasn't sold or what I haven't already promised to somebody to give as a gift, I'm going to wash over them, or I'm going to probably tear the paintings up or the drawings up. And so, like, not to be too dramatic like what they did in the 60s with burning their artwork, but it's important for me to know that I don't hold the artwork too like it's too precious. And I think that's one of the problems that was endemic to the last piece or art what I did, was that I'm like making all these plans and trying to make it graphically exciting. And at the same time, I think that sense of immediacy and that sense of genuineness was probably lost a little bit in the shuffle. So for me, after the show, I'm going to start over and see what comes from it. I do happen to have ADHD, and medication is a good thing in terms of as a formulary for us to be able to be more predictable with the world around us, maybe more, some instances, more productive or more efficient. But I believe that taking medication, I think, will probably preclude my ability to actually delve into a true creative process that I feel like I really have to do at this point in my life. I don't want to know what I'm going to do. I want to discover it. I want it to come upon me just as important as any of the most important events in my life that defined me weren't things that I had any idea were going to happen 2 seconds before it. Sometimes you find out about yourself under the worst circumstances. Then you can say, like, wow, I did okay in this instance with this, challenge or something like that.
Before he helped to found the Mayo Clinic, Dr. William Worrell Mayo had a small practice in a little house he built in Le Sueur. Eventually, he and his family moved to Rochester. Soon the house passed into the hands of the Cosgrove family, founders of Green Giant. Take a tour of the small residence a few of Minnesota's most prominent families used to call home.
The importance of keeping the Mayo House as a place to visit is that it really does illustrate the frontier life of the 1850s and how hard people had to work to live out here on the frontier. Mayos lived here. They moved in 1859 in November. They had been living across the river in Cronin's Precinct, which when Minnesota became a state was renamed Lake Prairie Township. And there was a flood in the spring of 1859, and Louisa Mayo said, "I won't live out here any longer." And so Dr. Mayo purchased these lots of land right here on Main Street. He wanted to be the doctor here in Le Sueur, and he built this house that summer, and they moved in. They lived here for 5 years until he became examining surgeon for the Civil War, which was what moved him to Rochester. I am Becky Pollock, and I am the site manager of the W.W. Mayo House in Le Sueur, Minnesota. It's a great place to visit. In particular, people don't recognize Le Sueur or Dr. Mayo having been here, and so to think about the Mayo Clinic that he's founded and the mansions that his family has built there in Rochester, and then to come here and look at this small frontier home where they had a meager living is a huge difference, and it really illustrates what pioneers of Minnesota could do back then. When you enter the house for a tour, one of the first things we look at is a portrait of the Mayo family taken in 1862. And it shows Louise and her husband, Dr. Mayo, and the 3 children they had at the time of that picture is Gertrude at about 8.5, Phoebe at about 5.5, and baby William, who was born in the house. From there we move into the family room, and the family would have spent a lot of time in the family room all together. They would have always had a fire in the stove in the wintertime, and they would have done things like read to the children. Louise was self-educated, so she very much believed in educating her children, so she would have spent a lot of time doing that in the family room. From there we move into the kitchen, and there's several neat items in there. A dough box, which you put your bread dough in, you put the cover on it, it keeps the dust and the bugs out while the dough rises. All their bread would have been baked in the wood-burning kitchen stove there, and there's a stovepipe that goes all the way across the room, and that helps heat the room, so that was done by design. There's examples of dishes from that time period. The teacups have no handles. That's because at that time period, people were packing up and moving west or moving wherever, and the first thing to break off were the handles. So you could purchase them without. One of my favorite items in the kitchen is the mother's rocking chair, because the left arm of the rocking chair is higher than the right arm, and that's so you could rock your baby closest to your heart and rest your arm there while doing so. It also illustrates the size of people at that time period. So Dr. Mayo was 5'4". His nickname was the Little Doctor, and Louisa was 5'2". Dr. Mayo built the house by hand, and so one of the doorways in the kitchen is just a closet, but it is the original size of the doorways throughout the house because he built it to his height, and there was no need to build it taller. Next you move into the parlor, and that's that room that was very prestigious. They would have kept the children out of there. It has a fancier wood stove, fancier wall coverings, the wallpaper, and they would have kept their fancier furnishings and items in there. It has much taller windows on the front of the house than the side of the house, and the parlor really illustrates that. There is one item in there that is the Mayos, and that is a camp chair. It was Louise Mayo's. She grew up in New England, and when she traveled to Michigan at the age of 18, she took that chair with her. She traveled by prairie schooner, which is a covered wagon pulled by oxen. In the evening times, they would circle the wagons, and she would use that chair. From there, we move upstairs into the master bedroom. The master bedroom is furnished with a rope-strung master bed. When you sleep in a rope-strung bed, your ropes start to sag. And so the phrase sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Sleep tight is referring to tightening your bed ropes. So they want to remind you to do that before you go to bed. There's a wooden tool to use to tighten the bed ropes in there. Also a baby cradle representing baby William, who was born in the house. The master bedroom is above the parlor, so it is the only bedroom with a stove in it, and that's because they wouldn't have often had a fire in the stove, so in the wintertime they really would have needed that extra warmth up there. The next room is the girls' bedroom, and they would have had all 3 girls sharing that room and one bed until one of their daughters, Sarah Frances, passed away. There's a couple of items of toys from that time period, some different types of dolls, a wax head doll, a china head doll, and also a miniature replica of a cook stove from that time period. And in that time, salesmen would go around using that replica to make sales of cook stoves, and then they would be sent to the family that ordered them. When a new model came out, he would give it away or sell it as a toy. And so it's a really neat little stove. This is the front room right above the entryway, and it's a very small room. And Dr. Mayo would have used this office to prep the herbs that he used in his practice or for studying. He wouldn't have seen patients there. As doctors at this time period always went out to see their patients. If you were ill, you would send a neighbor or a family member to go get the doctor. There's several medical tools on the desk. One of them is a bloodletter, and that was a very common practice at that time period. It's a little square item, and it's got a little lever on it. And you push the little lever, and it makes a little series of cuts to start the blood flowing. Dr. Mayo did not practice bloodletting. It was very common at that time period, and he may have had the tools to do it, but we don't know what in his education or experience stopped him from doing that. Dr. Mayo's first patient was a horse. He was working on this house when a gentleman came up and said, "My horse is ill. Can you help it?" And Dr. Mayo was able to help whatever was wrong with that horse, and that really helped his reputation locally here in Lesueur. It gives great perspective of the life of people in the 1850s, what frontier life would have been like in this little house, the chores and things that they would have done. It's fun to watch kids go through and they don't even think about the fact that their kitchen might not have a sink or a dishwasher. So it's important that we have these places for the next generation to see.
The Chatfield Brass Band and Music Lending Library is a huge source of pride for the town. Find out what makes both the band and the library important and unique.
Band music is fun. If the bandstand is the crown of the community, the brass band is the jewel in that crown. The Chatfield Brass Band in this community, I think, has a special place.
My father was Jim Perkins, who started the brass band in 1969 and the brass band Free Music Lending Library shortly after that. My dad decided that Chatfield needed to have an area band. And so what he did is he grabbed some old high school yearbooks and looked for pictures of people that he knew, sent him a note saying, "Hey, show up at band practice Thursday night." So once they created the band, then the biggest challenge was sheet music. They had to have music to play. Well, where do you find it?
Where do you find that music? In these filing cabinets.
This is a library of mostly band music. We lend the actual paper music out to bands and individuals all over the world.
This library is an incredible resource with literally tens and tens of thousands of compositions of almost every imaginable nature. It basically becomes part of one big story, the American melting pot music story of music from different cultures.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, one man, a vision, and a dream. And he's been gone almost 20 years, and just to really see this thrive and live on, it's just very worthwhile. I think he really found joy in that. You know, just filling lives and communities full of music is what a great gift to do. What a great legacy to leave behind.
That's all for this episode. If you enjoy programs like Off 90, please show your support by becoming a member of KSMQ Public Television. Keep local programming vibrant in southern Minnesota. Give us a call at 507-481-2095 or 1-800-658-2539 or sign up online at ksmq.org. Thanks for watching. Join us next time. Off 90.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.